Good evening. I am in process of completing my reading of the Daniel text, and will have it completed by the end of this semester. Um, Today, I want to discuss some of the ethical standards and the principles, and um, some that I have now come to have agreement with, and one that I'm still struggling with, um, which, of course, this is a process, so that's to be expected. The first one, as I was looking through the ACA Code of Ethics, one that stood out to me was that cultural sensitivity, E.5, point B, E.5, point D, so refraining from diagnosis. So states basically that we should be sensitive of someone's socioeconomic and cultural experiences when diagnosing mental disorders, and that if it could cause harm to an individual, this is point D, that we should consider the positive and negative implications of a diagnosis. So this principle, in my opinion, would come under non-maleficence. And what I needed to weigh for myself is, the process of a diagnosis is, a scientific process. It's a medical diagnosis. We don't, consider someone's socioeconomic or cultural background when we diagnose cancer. And so I was thinking about it from that point of view. So in my process, I've really been thinking about, some of these cultures that have been marginalized, that, a diagnosis of depression would negatively impact them socially, and how that could spiral them to an unhealthy place. And I think through the process of working through that myself, and what non-maleficence really means, I've been able to kind of move from the thought of, harming an individual by not diagnosing, to not causing harm by diagnosing. And so that's just been a process, and I feel like I've kind of come into agreement with that we do need to consider an individual's cultural background, their socioeconomic status, when we're in the process of diagnosis. The principle that I am still struggling with is the ethical standard B.6.E, that talks about, alerts us to the fact that we have an ethical obligation to provide competent clients with access to their records unless the records contain information that might be misleading or detrimental to the clients. So this one I struggle with, because once again, same principle, non-maleficence. What may be harmful to one individual may not be harmful to another. And as clinicians, I feel that could potentially take away from our professionalism to determine what is going to be helpful and harmful to our clients. Another thing that came to mind was, what happens if you have been transferred a case and you have, I know when I was at the clinic, 3 years worth of counseling notes about an individual. I didn't know this counselor. I didn't know the counselor prior. And so then I'm having to weigh them reading all these notes and how that could impact them, being treated for opiate addiction. Reading that, hey, this counselor said this about me and documented this. And then I'm responsible, and the agency, for what they're reading and how they're going to react. So I've really struggled with that, because I know that there is that place where it says, that if it would potentially cause harm, that we don't have to release those clinical case notes. However, what I've read, as I've read through the HIPAA policy and the standards, is that would be an unusual circumstance that would warrant withholding that information. And it just would concern me to do that. The other thing that I did read that I thought was interesting, and this is part of how I'm going to start, coming to terms with this standard and understanding. So the Department of Health and Human Services specifically says that psychotherapy notes, which are the personal notes of a mental health care provider documenting or analyzing the contents of a counseling session, are an exception to this rule. So I'm not understanding why that is documented under the Department of Health and Human Services, yet the ethical standards are saying that we have to release these notes. So the process that I'm going to go to learn this is I'm going to reach out to our local counseling association in South Carolina and kind of get an idea of where they stand and what would be the requirements, and really seek knowledge, because I think I'm at a point where I have this one experience at a pretty rough clinic, and that is my standard of understanding what counseling notes look like, and what situations look like. So I think that I really am challenged to go out and learn, is where I'm at. So I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you.